He is crying about his dead dad again. It is pathetic. It is like dating a toddler with a trust fund. Those exact words boomed through the car speakers just inches from my head. I was hiding in the trunk of my brother's SUV, buried under a wool blanket, sweat pouring down my back. My brother, Tyler, had just stepped out to get coffee, leaving his fiancée, Bianca, alone in the front seat. She thought she was safe. She thought she was private. She had no idea I was recording every single word. "Just wait," she told the man on the other end of the line. "Tomorrow, once we sign the papers, I am draining the $350,000. Then I am planting drugs in his sister's car. I will ruin her life before she can even try to stop me." Have you ever heard someone you trusted stab you in the back the second they thought you weren't listening? Tell me your story in the comments. To understand why I was hiding in the cargo hold of an SUV like a stowaway, you have to understand the last 6 months of my life. Our father died of a massive heart attack in January. It happened on a Tuesday, while he was making coffee. Just like that. The center of our universe was gone. The grief broke me, but it absolutely obliterated Tyler. He was the sensitive one, the artist, the one who needed Dad's approval like oxygen. When Dad died, Tyler didn't just grieve. He stopped functioning. He didn't shower. He didn't eat. He became a walking open wound. That is when Bianca appeared. She didn't just meet him, she hunted him. I watched it happen in slow motion, like a car crash you can't stop. She showed up at his grief support group, a place she had absolutely no business being. She claimed she was an orphan, that she had lost both her parents in a tragic car accident the year before. She played the role of the fellow survivor perfectly. She knew exactly what to say to a man who felt like he was drowning. She didn't throw him a lifeline. She became the water. She moved into our childhood home within 3 weeks. She took over his finances within 2 months. By month 4, she had effectively convinced him that I was the enemy. "Maya doesn't understand our connection," she would whisper to him, loud enough for me to hear from the kitchen. "She thinks I am after your money, because she cares too much about money. She is projecting, Ty. She is jealous that you found peace and she hasn't. The sacrifice I made wasn't just emotional. It was financial, and it was bleeding me dry." While Tyler was too depressed to work, the estate was tied up in probate. The bills didn't stop just because Dad's heart did. I drained my own savings, $50,000 I had scraped together for a down payment on a condo, just to cover the estate taxes and keep the lights on in the family home. I handled the lawyers, the funeral arrangements, the maintenance. I slept 4 hours a night. I worked my data analyst job during the day and managed Tyler's life at night. And Bianca? She lived in the house I paid to maintain. She ordered expensive sushi lunches on the credit card I paid off every month. She drove the SUV I paid the insurance on. And every time I tried to talk to Tyler about the budget, about the fact that we were burning through cash we didn't have yet, she was there, holding his hand, looking at me with those wide, innocent doe eyes. "Maya, stop stressing him out," she would say, her voice soft and patronizing. "Can't you see he is grieving? You are so cold. Money isn't everything." She successfully isolated him, brick by brick. The final blow came last week. I asked about the bridal party schedule, and she looked at me with a pitying smile. "Oh, honey," she said, smoothing her hair. "We decided it is best if you aren't in the bridal party. It is for your own good, really. You bring too much negative energy." Tyler agrees. "We just want a happy day." I stood there, keys in hand, the keys to the car she was about to drive to her dress fitting, and realized the truth. They were living lavishly on the promise of the life insurance payout that was pending transfer, while I was eating instant noodles to keep the electricity running. It wasn't just unfair. It was a hostile takeover of my family. She thought she had won. She thought I was just the bitter sister. She didn't realize that by pushing me out, she had given me the one thing I needed to take her down. Distance. I waited until the Escalade pulled into the parking lot of the rehearsal venue. As soon as the engine cut and the doors slammed shut, I counted to 10. Then, I popped the rear hatch from the inside, thank God for emergency release latches, and rolled out onto the pavement. My legs were numb, my back screamed in protest, but I didn't stop to stretch. I didn't go inside to confront them. Not yet. I pulled my hood up, called a rideshare, and went straight to my office. If Bianca wanted a war, she was going to get a nuclear winter. I work in data forensics. People hear that and think I sit in a dark room hacking mainframes like in the movies, typing furiously while green code cascades down a screen. It isn't like that. Real forensics isn't about breaking encryptions. It is about looking for the digital exhaust people leave behind when they think they are invisible. It is about patterns. And Bianca, for all her calculated cruelty, was lazy. 2 days ago, she had walked into my room and tossed her old iPhone onto my bed. She had upgraded to the latest model on Tyler's dime. Of course. Here, she had said, looking at my cracked screen with disdain. You can have my old one. I did a factory reset, so it is clean. Consider it a charity tax write-off. She laughed as she walked out. She thought she was being generous to the poor relation. She thought a factory reset wiped everything. She was wrong. I sat at my desk, the only light coming from my 3 monitors, and plugged the phone in. I didn't need to recover her deleted photos or texts. That is amateur hour. I needed the system logs. Specifically, I was looking for a feature most people don't even know exists, buried deep in the operating system to help with maps and traffic predictions. I didn't run a script. I didn't crack a password. I just navigated the menu. Settings, privacy, location services, system services. And there it was. The holy grail of digital footprints, significant locations. This feature doesn't just track where you go. It learns where you live. It tracks the frequency and duration of your visits to build a profile of your life. Bianca had wiped her photos, her contacts, and her apps, but she hadn't wiped the deep system cache. I clicked the tab. The screen populated with a list of coordinates. Starbucks on Main, 12 visits. Tyler's house, 45 visits. The nail salon, 8 visits. And then, a repeating, glaring anomaly. 34 visits. Every Tuesday and Thursday, between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. Every other Saturday, overnight. The system algorithm had automatically labeled this location with a single, damning word. Home. I clicked the map pin. It wasn't a gym. It wasn't the animal shelter where she claimed she was volunteering those afternoons. It was a specific address in Stone Mountain, 30 miles away from our side of town. I pulled up the street view. It was a rundown duplex, with peeling beige paint and a chain-link fence. I leaned back in my chair, the glow of the monitor reflecting in my eyes. The woman who demanded 5-star hotels and sneered at my budget sedan was spending half her week in a place that looked like it had been condemned in the 90s. She wasn't just cheating. She was commuting. She had a whole other life that ran on a schedule, a life she kept hidden behind the facade of the grieving, supportive fiancé. She thought deleting her call history made her a ghost. She forgot that the machine always remembers. I drove to the coordinates. It was 11 o'clock at night, and the drive to Stone Mountain took 40 minutes of white-knuckled silence. I didn't play music. I didn't call anyone. I just drove, watching the affluent suburbs of our neighborhood fade into strip malls, and then into the cracked pavement of the forgotten edge of the city. The GPS led me to a cul-de-sac of duplexes that had seen better decades. Lawns were overgrown with crabgrass, and a rusted sedan sat on cinder blocks 2 driveways down. I killed my headlights and rolled to a stop across the street from number 402. It was exactly as the street view had promised. Beige siding stained with mildew, a single yellow bug light buzzing on the porch, and a tricycle overturned in the dirt patch that passed for a front yard. My heart was beating in my throat. Not from fear, but from the sheer, vertiginous drop of reality. This was where she lived. The woman who demanded imported silk sheets and threw tantrums if her wine wasn't chilled to exactly 45 degrees came home to this. I got out of the car. The street was quiet. I walked up the driveway, sticking to the shadows. The blinds in the front window were cheap plastic, the kind that never close all the way. There was a gap maybe 2 inches wide at eye level. I stepped into the flower bed, mud squelching over the toes of my expensive heels, and looked inside. The television was on, casting a flickering blue light over the room. A man was sitting in a worn recliner, folding laundry from a plastic basket. He looked exhausted. He was wearing a faded t-shirt, his hair thinning, his face stamped with the kind of bone-deep fatigue that comes from working double shifts. But it wasn't the man that made my breath hitch. It was the wall behind him. Hanging right there, above a scuffed sofa, was a framed wedding portrait. It was enlarged, glossy, and undeniable. It was Bianca. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen. Her hair styled differently, but it was her. She was smiling up at the tired man in the recliner, her hands resting on his chest, and on the sofa below the picture, curled up under a pink fleece blanket, was a little girl who couldn't have been more than 5 years old. She had Bianca's nose. She had Bianca's chin. I raised my phone, my hands steady as stone, and snapped a photo through the gap in the blinds. As I watched them, this tired man and this sleeping child, the full weight of what Bianca had done to my brother crashed into me. It wasn't just greed. It was something far more predatory. I thought back to the grief support group where she met Tyler. She had told him she was an orphan. She had cried with him, mirroring his exact pain, matching his exact rhythm of loss. That is when I realized the true nature of the monster we were dealing with. Bianca wasn't just a liar. She was a mirror. She studied her victims. She found the empty, broken places inside them and poured herself into the cracks until she fit perfectly. Tyler needed someone who understood the loss of a parent, so she became a grieving orphan. This man in the recliner probably needed something else entirely, and she had become that for him too. She didn't have a personality. She had a strategy. She was a chameleon algorithm, programmed to reflect deep needs back at the target until they couldn't tell where their pain ended and her manipulation began. That is why Tyler couldn't see the truth. He wasn't looking at a woman. He was looking at the solution to his grief. I backed away from the window, bile rising in my throat. I had the photo, but I needed something official. Something that would hold up in a court of law. Not just the court of opinion. I walked to the mailbox at the end of the driveway. It was a standard metal box, the latch broken. I opened it. It was stuffed. Full bills, flyers, junk mail. I pulled out a handful and used my phone's flashlight to scan the addresses. Past due notice. Electricity. Pediatric dentist. Reminder. For Lily Miller. Urgent. Credit card final notice. And then, the smoking gun. A letter from the IRS. It was an official notice regarding a tax adjustment. The addressee line was printed in stark black capital letters. Mr. Jason Miller and Mistress Bianca Miller. Joint filing status. Married. Tax year. 2023. She wasn't just cheating. She was legally, federally married. She had a husband. She had a child. She was currently committing bigamy, tax fraud, and identity theft. And she was doing it all while wearing my mother's engagement ring. I took photos of every single envelope. I captured the dates, the names, the urgent red stamps of debt. I put the mail back exactly as I found it and walked back to my car. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, looking at the photos on my screen. The sleeping child. The tired husband. The tax letters. This wasn't just evidence. This was a nuclear bomb, and in less than 12 hours, at St. Jude Cathedral, I was going to drop it right on her head. I didn't call the police. Not yet. Police take reports, they don't stop weddings. I needed something faster. I needed to catch her in a felony so undeniable, so immediate, that even my love-struck brother couldn't look away. I needed to hand him the knife so he could cut the cord himself. The wedding was at the St. Jude Cathedral Hotel, a venue that cost more than my annual salary. The air smelled of expensive lilies and impending disaster. I arrived an hour early. I wasn't wearing a bridesmaid dress. I was wearing my court suit, charcoal gray, sharp lines, armor. I wasn't there to celebrate. I was there to litigate. I found Thomas, our family's driver, waiting by the service entrance. Thomas had driven my father for 20 years. He had driven me to prom. He had also driven Bianca to her volunteer gigs and watched her treat the staff like furniture. He hated her. When I told him the plan, he didn't blink. He just straightened his tie and said, "Give me the envelope, Miss Maya." I handed him the bait. It was a masterpiece of social engineering. I had drafted a letter on heavy cream stock that matched our family's wealth management firm perfectly. The subject line was bold and bureaucratic. Urgent estate disbursement. Tax year deadline. The letter stated that a forgotten trust fund from our late father, valued at $500,000, had been cleared for immediate release. But there was a catch, a specific, legal catch designed to hang her. To avoid a 40% inheritance tax, the funds had to be transferred to a single beneficiary before the legal status of the recipient changed. In other words, she had to sign for the money before she got married. The trap wasn't the money. The trap was the attachment. A federal affidavit of marital status. It required her to swear, under penalty of perjury and federal wire fraud statutes, that she was currently unmarried. If she signed it, she wasn't just a liar. She was a felon committing wire fraud on paper. But a trap only works if the animal is hungry. And Bianca was starving. I slipped into the groom's holding area, which shared a thin connecting door with the bridal suite. I had texted Tyler. "Meet me in the groom's room. 5 minutes. Do not tell her. It's a surprise gift from Dad." He was there, looking dapper in his tuxedo, but his eyes were anxious. "Maya, I can't be here," he hissed, checking his watch. "Bianca said you weren't allowed." "Shh," I whispered, pressing a finger to my lips. I pointed to the connecting door. "Just listen." Through the wood, we heard the frantic ding of a phone notification. Then, Bianca's voice, sharp and terrified. Damn it. She was reading a text. I knew. Because I knew her financial situation now. I knew about the gambling debts she was hiding under Jason's name. I knew about the loan shark who had texted her 10 minutes ago. Payment due by 5 p.m. Or we send the photos to your fiancé. She was cornered. She needed liquid cash today or her house of cards would collapse before she even walked down the aisle. There was a knock on her door. Thomas's deep baritone came through the wall. Miss Bianca? A courier just dropped this off. He said it is urgent legal correspondence regarding the estate. Slide it under, she snapped. We heard the rustle of paper. A long silence followed. Then, a gasp. Oh my God, she whispered. 500,000? The courier said it expires at noon. Miss, Thomas added through the door, his voice perfectly professional. It is a tax deadline. If you don't claim it as a single entity before the ceremony, it goes back into probate. Give me a pen, she shouted, the panic in her voice replaced by pure, unadulterated greed. Thomas, get me a pen. Fast. I looked at Tyler. He frowned, confusion bunching his forehead. What money? Dad didn't leave a trust fund. Just wait, I said, my hand on the doorknob. Just wait. I waited for the scratching sound of the pen against the heavy cardstock. It was a dry, rasping noise, like a rat scurrying inside a wall. Scritch. Scratch. She signed it. She had just signed away her freedom for a lie that didn't even exist. I didn't kick the door down. I didn't burst in shouting. I opened it slowly, deliberately, the way you open a pantry when you know there is an infestation inside. Bianca was standing there in her $10,000 custom lace gown, holding the document like a winning lottery ticket. Her makeup was flawless, her hair a perfect cascade of curls, her smile predatory and satisfied. She was already mentally spending the money. When she saw me standing in the doorway, the smile vanished instantly, replaced by a sneer of absolute contempt. What are you doing here? She hissed, shoving the paper behind her back. I told security to keep the trash out. I am just here to collect the mail, I said, walking over and gently taking the paper from her hand. She was so shocked by my audacity that she let it go. I glanced at the signature. Bianca, Sterling. The ink was still wet. You marked the box that says single, never married. I noted, my voice conversational. Almost bored. So? She rolled her eyes, smoothing the silk of her skirt. I am single. In 20 minutes. I won't be. Now get out, before I have Thomas drag you out. That is interesting, I said, looking her dead in the eye. Because the state of Georgia seems to think you have been married to a Mr. Jason Miller for 4 years. Bianca froze. It wasn't a normal freeze. It was the stillness of an animal hearing a twig snap in the dark. The color drained from her face so fast it looked like a special effect. You are crazy, she laughed. But the sound was brittle, like glass breaking. I don't know who that is. You are delusional. I think you do, I said. I think you go back to his apartment every Tuesday and Thursday. I think you use his Netflix account. I think you share a daughter named Lily, who has your nose. You stalker. Her voice pitched up into a scream. She looked around the room frantically. You are making this up. Tyler. She yelled for him, desperate to control the narrative before it slipped away. Tyler! Come here. Your sister is having a psychotic break. She expected a fight. She expected me to scream back, to pull her hair, to make a scene she could dismiss as jealousy or mental instability. She wanted the drama because she could manipulate drama. She knew how to play the victim in a shouting match, but she couldn't manipulate silence. And she couldn't manipulate what was behind door number 2. I stepped aside. The bathroom door behind me opened. Jason walked out. He looked tired, his shoulders slumped in a cheap suit that was a size too big. He was holding the hand of a confused 5-year-old girl, wearing a flower girl dress I had seen in the photos. Hello, B, Jason said softly. Bianca made a sound I will never forget. A strangled, high-pitched whimper, like a dog being kicked. She backed up until she hit the vanity table, knocking over a bottle of expensive perfume. It shattered. The smell of tuberose and rubbing alcohol filled the room, choking us. Jason, she whispered, her hands trembling. I can explain. It is a job. I am just doing a job. I told you. I am consulting. A job? Jason held up his phone. His hand was shaking. Just a little. You told me you were in Dubai. You are getting married? To him? He pointed a finger at the connecting door to the groom's room. Tyler was standing there. He had walked in when I opened the door. He had seen the signature. He had heard the job comment. He looked at this woman, the woman who had slept in his bed, worn our mother's jewelry, and isolated him from his own flesh and blood, and he looked like he was seeing a stranger. Tyler, baby. Bianca lunged forward, grabbing his lapels, her eyes wide and manic. Listen to me. They set me up. That is her ex. Maya paid him to do this. She is trying to ruin us. Tyler gently removed her hands from his suit. He did it with the same care and revulsion you would use to remove a leech. I heard you, Tyler said. His voice was dead. Flat. In the car. Yesterday. Maya recorded you. Bianca stopped breathing. I heard you call me a toddler, Tyler said, stepping back from her. I heard you say you were going to plant drugs on my sister. And I just watched you sign a federal affidavit committing fraud against my family. The room was silent except for the little girl, Lily, who tugged on Jason's hand. Daddy? Why is Mommy wearing a princess dress? I pulled out my phone. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gloat. I treated her exactly like what she was. A mess that needed to be cleaned up. I have the police on speed dial, Bianca. They are in the lobby. They aren't here for the wedding. Jason filed a report this morning. Jason nodded, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. Identity theft, Bianca. You took out 3 credit cards in Lily's name to fund this charade. You stole our daughter's credit before she even started kindergarten. You have 2 choices, I told her. You can walk out the back door with the officers right now, quietly. Or we can go out to the altar and tell 300 people why the bride is leaving in handcuffs. Bianca looked at the fraudulent document on the floor. She looked at Jason, who refused to meet her eyes. She looked at the exit. The arrogance evaporated. She slumped, her posture collapsing like a marionette with cut strings. I want a lawyer, she whispered. You are going to need one, I said. We didn't make a scene. We didn't give her the audience she craved. Thomas walked out to the ballroom where 300 guests were waiting for the bridal march, and calmly announced that the wedding was cancelled due to a critical legal emergency. There was murmuring, sure, but mostly people just checked their phones and left. It was anticlimactic, and that was exactly how I wanted it. Bianca was escorted out via the service elevator by 2 plainclothes officers I had tipped off about the outstanding warrants. She didn't look back. She walked with her head down, the train of her expensive dress dragging on the dirty linoleum floor. She knew the game was over. Tyler and I sat in his Escalade in the parking lot for a long time. The engine was off. The silence was heavy, but it wasn't uncomfortable anymore. He ripped off his silk bow tie and threw it onto the dashboard like it was a piece of trash. I am sorry, he said, his voice thick. He didn't look at me. He stared out the window at the empty parking spaces. I let her push you out. I let her win for so long. She didn't win, I said, reaching over to squeeze his hand. We are here. She is not. We drove to a 24-hour diner, the same grease pit Dad used to take us to after Little League games when we were kids. We sat in a red vinyl booth, me in my court suit and Tyler in his tuxedo, and ordered cheeseburgers and milkshakes. We didn't talk about Bianca. We didn't talk about the money or the fraud or the lies. We just sat there, 2 survivors of a shipwreck, dipping fries in ketchup and remembering what it felt like to be brother and sister again. Bianca pleaded guilty to 3 counts of fraud and identity theft 6 months later. The sentences ran concurrently, but she won't be wearing designer gowns anytime soon. Jason filed for divorce and was granted full custody of Lily. Last I heard, they moved back to his hometown to be closer to his parents. Tyler sold the big house. He said it felt like a museum of bad memories. He bought a smaller place, a fixer-upper just 10 minutes from my apartment. Last Sunday, he came over for dinner. He brought the wine. I cooked. He looked happy, not the manic, desperate happy he was when he was with her, trying to fill the void Dad left behind. He looked real. You saved my life, he told me, while we were drying dishes. I just checked the Wi-Fi, I joked, bumping his shoulder with mine. But we both knew it was true. Sometimes, the person who loves you the most isn't the one who says yes to everything. It is the one who loves you enough to burn your fantasy down, just to save you from the fire. If you enjoyed watching a gold digger get outsmarted by a data analyst, hit that subscribe button. I have a lot more stories about how the truth always leaves a digital trail.